Atlantic Ocean, upon me hills, to country, to educate, elevate, and promote. Yeah, focus on Liberia, for Liberia, Liberia, for Liberia, yeah, 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 yeah. From Monday to Sunday. From Monday to Sunday, it's focused on Liberia. Talk about home affairs, in diaspora, current affairs, reliable information. Talking about culture, politics, education, entertainment, business, sports, advertisement, articulation. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. From Monday to Sunday. Focus on.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. Jimmy, are you frozen? Welcome to Tough Talking Thursday on Focus on Liberia. My name is Dennis Jai, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. In tonight's edition, we're going to be looking at the role of the Liberian diaspora in the development of our country, Liberia. This is coming on the heels of the 2-year anniversary of the passage of the dual citizenship law. When dual citizenship law was passed, Liberians outside of Liberia in the diaspora who take on the citizenship of other countries can still be called Liberians. But there are some restrictions in it, but that's not what we are talking. We want to talk about the role of the diaspora in the development of our country. We know that Liberians outside of Liberia, especially in North America, are doing very well, and Europe, Australia, are doing very well, trying to help their country either through economic contributions, knowledge and skills transfer, or capacity building, social development, community projects, advocacy and governance, humanitarian assistance, engagement in politics, and all the 9 yards. That's been their role, but what has been the impact? Who or what is responsible for anything that we think is negative in strengthening their involvement into their home country? We're going to talk all that today. Let me welcome our panelists here, our panelists that we have assembled to talk about this. Let me welcome our governance advisor, Mr. Atma K. Salim. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Dennis. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you. Let me also welcome Mr. Jimmy Eastman from the nation's capital. When we talk politics around the capital of the United States, especially during your election season, you want to talk to Jimmy first. Welcome, Jimmy.
It's great to be here with these astute gentlemen. I look forward to a good show, man.
Thank you. Let me also welcome Mr. Thomas B. Kana, our public financial management practitioner, soon to be the resident economist. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you, Dennis, and hi to all the panelists and the listeners.
Thank you. Let me welcome Dr. Abdullah Dukle, who has the privilege of working with 3 presidents: a diplomat, a journalist, and also a teacher. Welcome, Doc.
Thank you, Dennis. Mostly a teacher, but I'm here to learn from my young colleagues.
Thank you. Talking about young colleagues, we want to learn from all of you who are watching the show tonight. What is the role of diaspora, the Liberian diaspora, in the development of our country? I want us to start, just on the basic level. Let's start with definition. When we say Liberian diaspora, Mr. Salih, what we're talking about here? Just let's lay it bare so we understand the terms.
Oh, thank you, Dennis. Like everybody else, I'm honored to be here. I'm looking forward to the discussion. So diaspora simply means people who are dispersed from their homeland for one reason or the other. It could be it could have been the were forced to flee their homeland as a result of crisis, some kind of economic migration, or fear for persecution, political persecution, or whatnot. In our case, there have been different waves of the so-called Liberian diaspora. And in the 1980s, for example, after the military coup in our country, certain groups of Liberians fled the country because, they for what happened in the country. Obviously, there was political tension following the military coup, and then of course the 1989 NPFL invasion of the country, ensuing various civil wars that happened. Nearly a million and a half Liberians fled all over the sub-region, and here in the United States, on the European continent, across in Australia, Asia, we're all over the place. And so when we are talking about diaspora, it's good you asked that question, really, because it's a nebulous term. It's a terminology that has been used for different groups of people, different populations during different periods of history. But for our specific context, I think the most the number of Liberians who are away from the homeland and who are connected to the homeland. It's important to qualify the definition of the Liberian diaspora. We're speaking specifically about and of the Liberian diaspora. The diasporans are people who are away from the homeland, but are deeply connected to the homeland, would like to be in the homeland, are not able to be there, or will experience difficulties in abandoning where they now call their new home or where they settled to go back to the homeland, who are connected by the homeland by history, by culture, by language, and just share nostalgia of being part of that heritage.
Thank you. Dr. Dugle, does every country have a diaspora population? Because I know Americans are all over the world. I don't hear, Americans in the diaspora. I know Europeans too are all over the world. Is this thing about just Africans and other, like Asia and South America, or is it all over the place?
I think there's a diaspora everywhere. I mean, I know from fact when I was in Abidjan, I knew the French people voted. They had, in fact, there's a representative of the French diaspora in the French parliament. And also, I was a member of the Democrats in the diaspora, the U.S. Democrat. The votes, we discussed things. So there is a diaspora everywhere. Of course, in the last few years, I think people have moved faster. Opening up crisis in the countries, in the global south mostly. And also the means of communication and transport have, been very, very easy to get somehow. So people move up. I mean, don't tell that to people who walk from Mexico to to the U.S. But I think every country has a diaspora. It's how you treat it, how you make it valid. India, there's a big Indian community in the U.S. You can see everywhere. They're not just here as American Indians, but they're also here taking part of Indian. I remember when the Prime Minister of India came to visit the White House. I think it was 6-7 months ago. You should have seen downtown DC, but they were not really talking about being in diaspora in America. They were talking about how they belong to India, although they live here. And I think it's probably also the thing about the first generation of diaspora. The first generation to migrate usually stays, is a diaspora. Because after that, The kids usually, I took my kids to Liberia. They loved it. They worked there for a year and a half before coming back, but they don't consider themselves Liberians. I mean, they say it nominally, but if you say, "Oh, this is happening to Liberia," they'll say, "Ah, okay." But if you say something is happening in Washington, they say, "Oh, what is it?" So first generation, yes, I think that's it. But
And
definitely,
that's a
there's a
very important.
diaspora for every country. I mean, people
Thank,
move. I
thank you.
mean, there's no way you can like people. Even North Korea has a diaspora. You
Mm,
know, you can't lock people up in a country. There's no way you can lock people up. You can't stop them from moving either. So people
right.
move on crisis or just to for adventure or to just discover the world.
Thank you, Jimmy. I spoke to one Liberian lawyer. He said Liberia was built on exclusion. I don't know if I agree with him, but he said all the time we try to exclude people. You this Liberian, this other Liberian. Now we have a group called Diaspora Liberia. Does this not sound polarizing to you? Why aren't we all called just Liberians and we just go on our merry way instead of diaspora Liberian, home-based Liberian? And so, does this sound polarizing and divisive, for the lack of a better word?
Excellent question. The lawyer was not completely right. There have been practices, as we know, of if not complete exclusion, marginalization, and not receptive to the contribution of everybody. And if you want to consider that exclusion, but just like my learned colleagues have said here, it is the diaspora is basically those who have left their homeland. Now, there is also something called the African diaspora. This encompasses all Africans that have left Africa largely due to the slave trade. They are in South America, they are in West Indies, they're in North America, they're all over. They make up a heavy, large group. All African Americans consider themselves as part of the African diaspora. They still relate to Africa, but they know they're outside. In our case, the Liberian diaspora, just like one of my colleagues said here, it's been waves of war, civil conflict that has seen the exodus, the brain drain of our country. If anybody who is capable to run away, to escape, to those who have been learned, they will go and make a living somewhere else. So as a result, um, you find many of the talented people, the people who had more finances, left Liberia. Now, when it comes down to going back, when they return, you know, Liberians see these people as more, the Liberian or local Liberians see the returning diaspora Liberians as in a better position, you know, because they when they left Liberia, of course, it was devastated. So poverty is rampant. So they see these Liberians as privileged. And again, they've seen when the Liberians come back, they don't stay. They don't invest enough of their time and money to convince the local Liberians there that they are one. They simply go, they work, get good jobs, and then they leave. So the local Liberians have they feel that they've been slighted, or they're not enough commitment. In fact, President Sirleaf said the other day, one thing about the Liberians, he said they're so transient. In other words, we're just moving, or we're not coming home and putting our full investment back home since the wave, the exodus of our people. And that has left a crippling effect because, like I said, when these things happen, your best will be the first to leave because they will be easier to seek greener pastures or safety somewhere else. So we have to reverse this trend that we can our fellow countrymen will embrace us when we come back, but we have to make a commitment before that will happen.
Thank you. And we're going to come to that. I'm going to, if what exists between it. But let me go to Tom. Thomas, the same questions. In time past, in the 70s, we had American Liberians, native Liberians were very pronounced. So it's like all the time we find a way to draw a line. Now we have diaspora Liberians and Liberians on the ground. What is so we are so same question. Why can we all be just Liberians? Why these lines?
I mean, the one with Congo native, these are historical classification of people who were there before the arrival of the settlers. So I think it's part of our history. If you go through the history of even this country, they have you often hear people say this is a country of migrants. So it means people came from other places and came here. So that's part of our history. On the issue of diaspora and those who are home, I think that classification is basically based on geographic boundary. So if you are within the geographic boundary of Liberia at this point in time, you are based in Liberia. But if you are outside, if you are even based across the Waterside Bridge and you are across the border, you are in the diaspora because you are not in Liberia. So, like Ahmed said, the issue of being a diaspora citizen is that you are still a citizen of that country, and this is one reason why I think people bought into the issue of the dual citizenship law because people were born in Liberia, they grew up in Liberia. We often hear people say, "This is where my naval twin was buried." So you're a citizen. We're all citizens. But for the fact that you are geographically not there, then you have to be classified in a specific category. So I think this is where you have these Liberians who are in Liberia and diaspora Liberians. And let's also take into consideration that these classifications are not constant, they change. So you see someone who is in the diaspora and then they go back home. Like when Madam Sali became president in 2006, by 28, 2009, and 10, we saw people packing out from America and relocating back home. So when you leave and go back home, you are no longer a diaspora Liberian. You've gone back to Liberia. And then others continue to leave for education, for jobs, and all of that, and come out here. So I think for me, it's just in terms of geography. This is not much of um, a line that we are drawing to divide ourselves. We're just saying this group of people are currently out of the country, and the other ones are back home.
Mr. Dukley, what does diaspora mean to you? Diaspora Liberian.
Diaspora, when you look at the definition of the word itself, is someone who has adopted another place of dwelling or residing other than where he or she was born. So, in that sense, for those of us who, for either for one reason or another, migrated from our native land, we consider ourselves diasporan. Now, I think in the last decades or so, the term diaspora has been associated mostly, people who left Liberia during the course of our civil wars and all the associated upheaval that occurred. So, in that sense, we can also assign the term diaspora to them, since they are not in their native land and they've adopted or they have resided other places outside their homeland. But you see, Dennis, this term diaspora here has also taken a different meaning in terms of the Liberian context, in terms of our socio-economic makeup after the war. Because usually, when you talk about diaspora in Liberia, uh, what comes to people's mind is Generally speaking, people think of people who came from the United States. Even though the terms apply to anyone who is outside Liberia, whether in Europe, whether in Australia, whether in Canada, wherever you are.
If,
But
if
because
you're in Ghana, you're on refugee camp. If you're in America, you're in a diaspora. That's what you call
that's right, yeah. So, but because the emphasis and uh, because the United States has a significant number of Liberians, particularly after the war, so everything that people associate with diaspora usually stems from what they consider from the United States.
I think that the White Tower brings that kind of. And many people love to use the White Tower in a water bottle.
And then with the traffic hanging halfway.
and that's what we were going to next. But uh, we were talking about the role, the benefits of diaspora Liberians, or what we think. And first of all, Mr. Salih, you define it first, right? So how is it that when people are in Guinea,
Mm.
in Ghana, Sierra Leone, Nigeria is refugee camp? Only when you're in the West, and then we talk of diaspora mainly. I mean, what is causing that? Is it class?
No, I don't know. Who classifies it as being in a refugee camp. Maybe it was because Budumburam camp in Ghana was so popular and famous. People came there from home and to see their relatives and back and forth. And so people associated that it's sort of analogous to people who are outside of Liberia in the West African region. But the technical definition of a diaspora is again dispersion of people from their homeland, for whatever the reason may be, and who have strong ties or the desire, nostalgic connections to their homeland, and people in who remained in the region. In Nigeria, in Ghana, and Sierra Leone, and so forth, they're all Liberians in the diaspora. They're all part of the Liberian diaspora. But of course, you're right that it's a matter of perception and it's a matter of impact as well. So Liberians in the U.S. in particular, even Liberians in Europe, they're in diaspora, but how often do you really hear that emphasis? Liberians in Australia and other places in Asia, you don't hear that diaspora emphasis. When there's conflict or collision over ideology or economic, political, is really typically uh, originating from those in the United States. If you go back and review the history of Union of Liberian Associations in the Americas, EULA, well documented by Liberian scholars and historians and those who are around who participated in the early days of EULA. It tells you, that I know you come to talk specifically about what's happening between us and the
Yeah.
them and us sort of demonization and favoritism and objectification and divisionism, all of that you'll get into. But the point is, I think EULA and the political aspect of the Liberian students who were here in the US, Liberians who came after the coup, 1979, 1980, 1985, and then after the 1989, 1990 incursion, the various episodes of the war, different waves of Liberians who came, our engagement with the politics in Liberia. It is these Liberians who have capital, who have connections. So if you wanted the peace to hold, you had to you have to have the sort of connivance of some sort of Liberians in America. If you wanted something, a coup to happen or something not to work, you took Liberians from there who financed, who facilitated, who were the brain trust. So I think by virtue of these circumstances and these happenings and these historical happenings, America has become analogous to the term the Liberian diaspora.
Thank you. A lot of time we talk about the contributions of Liberians in the diaspora. Let me go through a few of them, and then we can discuss whether this is true or not. We talk about remittances that Liberians abroad send money back home, which support families and stimulates local economy. They do investment. Members of the diaspora invest in businesses and real estate in Liberia. They engage in education and training. Professionals from the diaspora often return to Liberia to share their knowledge, one of which is our Independence Day orator, Sisi Goya. Capacity building through various programs, initiatives. They help build the capacity of local institutions, like focus on Liberia right there in Monrovia. Health initiatives, Liberian abroad, contribute to health projects, medical mission like the one of the Liberian Medical Mission of Joe Saka. Community projects, many diaspora organizations engage in community projects. Today I was watching, and it's, I think, Wives of Liberia, something like that. They had a program of young children, and I say, wow, this is good. And of course, if you talk EULA, you talk about political advocacy. Of late, almost every politician will come here and form this party in the USA. You know, we also, so there's a political engagement in politics. We return home and we participate directly through running for offices and all the 9 yards. Cultural program. We organize, I mean, we have our culture, we brought it from Liberia, is here, we passing it on to our children. We have been able to take that culture forward. And we have these networks, of course, humanitarian reliefs and all the 9 yards. According to us, these are our contribution. Mr. Dukley, are we really doing these? And if so, how are these felt if that's true that we are really engaging in these things? Are these really felt in Liberia that people say yes? And if not, why not everybody realizing the tremendous such contribution of the diaspora? Oh, Bakai Dukley, sorry. Yeah, I meant the president. That's
Yeah.
Dr. Dukley and then Bakai Dukley. So when I don't put doctor, I'm talking to you.
Okay. It's got several layers to that question.
Okay, let's go with the part that say, are we really doing these things?
Yes, I would say yes to some extent and no to some extent. So um, the reason being, a lot of emphasis is put on diaspora Liberians who are interested in politics in Liberia. And so you see a lot of people who have lived in the diaspora for so long, and if anyone expresses his or her interest in politics, then people talk about the diaspora community. But then is we wherever we go, wherever we live, we go through a process of adaptation, and in that adaptation process, we learn new things, and we adopt new attitude, new behaviors that in a way sometimes dilute our own culture. And so to preserve ours, we try to instill in our children, some of the things that we value in terms of what we wear or what we eat, etc., etc. But there are lots of movements that are not recognized for what they are in terms of the contribution of diaspora Liberians in areas of business or culture or capacity building, simply because those areas they are not related to the government, or they are not funded by the government, or they are not part of the political landscape as we know it. So yes, that's what I tell people all the time. I say, whether someone tells you that they send money back home or not, they are. So that's how we, in our own ways, we help alleviate the suffering of our family members, our friends, and sometimes it's not recognized for what it is. And I don't know. I remember one time when Charles Taylor was uh, ruling Liberia. They tried to get Western Union or these agencies to pay their money in local currencies, in the Liberian dollar, and we saw what happened, because in a way it was a recognition from Charles Taylor of the contribution of the Liberian diaspora except that he understood it to sort of mean that it was undermining his regime. So it's got so many facets to it, Dennis. Um, and so when we, you know, myself being an example of what I'm talking about, when I left Liberia, I did not return until 26 years later. That was when I paid my first visit, and that wasn't intentional. It was not because I didn't want to go, but where I found myself and the things I was doing. So my migration had multiple phases. Where the first phase, when I left, I went to Egypt, and I was in Egypt for 10 years, and then after 10 years, I moved to Canada. And in those transitions between Egypt and Canada, there were a lot of things that happened in my lives. I had my children here. My children, grew up here. My children have Liberian names. At home, we eat Liberian food. So as much as I'm a diaspora Liberian, but I still try to instill in my children what I know to be my value, what I know to be my traditional clothing, what I know to be my culture, whatever it is that I represent as Liberian.
Thank you, Tom. Are these, if what I read is true, what do you think have been the impact? Are these things felt back home?
I mean, yeah, you listed a couple of items. I think it cuts across generally. On the issue of remittances, yes, I think based on the data, last year, 2023, was around 110 million. The money that goes through Cash App, Sendwave, Western Union, and all of that. But the reason why you don't see it in terms of the aggregate impact is going at the micro level. I mean, people are sending it to family members. You send it for school fee, people send it for healthcare. So even though it's 110 million, which could possibly in 2, 3 years maybe build a road from one county to the other, but it's not being coordinated to implement one single project. So you would think that, okay, but all that money came, what happened? But if you go down to the individual micro level and see the individuals that have received that money, there are lives that have been saved through these remittances. There are people who get sick and they are not going to survive if the family members don't send money from America to go back to Liberia. There are people who are in school in Liberia, and if you ask them, they will say, my sponsorship is coming entirely from the US. They take them from elementary school all the way to university. So the remittances are playing a major role. And they also serve as a cash flow. They serve as a cash flow for the government because it makes the government of Liberia to have access to foreign currency because the remittances are in US dollar. You see, sometimes even when we have currency issues, like we have the Liberian dollar devalue, and the central bank wants to address it, they will say, for instance, you receive only 75%, they will put a percentage to it. So what I'm saying is that these remittances play a role at the macro level, but their impact is mostly felt at the micro level, which is the individual level. Education, yes. I know people here who are contributing to building schools in the towns and villages where they come from. There are people here who are funding clinics. They buy medicine and send it back home. I was affiliating with a church in North Carolina last year where the chairlady of the church normally has this program where they raise money and go back to Liberia, they go to orphanage homes and all of that. So across education, health, remittances, there is definitely a contribution that is being made by the diaspora. And then people are going back home, retiring and going to teach. At one point, I was hired by a development agency to go and do some work in Nimba. And you find some professors who retire from here who are at the Nimba Community College. So in summary, there is contribution across the board, whether it's in politics in other places. I think the only thing we need to do is to be able to China it better so that we can get a greater impact. But almost all of those things that you listed, I could say that the diaspora had a part to play across those bullets that you highlighted.
Dr. Dugley, how do we get that greater impact that Thomas is talking about?
Uh, first, that great impact, you will have to have a program from the government that addresses, that try to bring the diaspora issues to bear on the, to get, you have to have the government impact. Because otherwise, as Mr. Kenneth said, you're going to have everybody sending $10,000 here, $5,000 here every year, but it goes into what? To pay school fees and buy Chinese junk on the market and then spend in Lebanese stores. And so the money comes in by the door and it goes through the windows, 10,000 windows. So the money doesn't even stay in the country. Because whatever we produce, except paying for school fees and all of that, the money that you send to Liberia doesn't stay in Liberia. They go buy sneakers, they buy jeans, they buy everything that is not made in Liberia. So the money doesn't stay. So from the lack of organizational system, there's also this fact that we import everything. So the money goes out. It comes through the big door, and then you got 10,000 windows going to China to support China's industry, to support Lebanon, to support, I don't know, Turkey. But I wanted to come back to the issue of definition of the diaspora. I think Ahmed made a good case, but there have always been return to, like, when Tubman became president, he was the first real dark-skinned president. A lot of the Congo people left. They never went back. They moved. They said no, they're not going to stay there. And then when Tubman took over, the same thing happened. So we always have this movement between here and Liberia. But what happens now is that we have missed one point. When I was at LU as a young professor, you couldn't teach in a class if you were not a master's or PhD holder. Everybody who taught at LU, you had to have a master's, that was the minimum. Otherwise, you're a TA. And what happened so imagine, we had 290 professors at the University of Liberia who were either masters and PhD. We had doctors in the street. We had lawyers. Since there was no master programs in Liberia, all of these people earned their degrees outside of the country. So when the war broke down, they were able to follow the same channel that took them out to go out back in the diaspora. So actually, our middle class got moved out of Liberia, mostly to the US. And that's what, politicians use it to raise money, to create attention, all of that. But they don't want you to be there because you represent the real middle class of Liberia. So the middle class of Liberia left in 1990. That is the problem. So whatever we were talking about, this donation, charitable things and all of that, billions, send money to your cousin to buy a house, to build a house. When you go back, you say, I built a house here, but I think somebody stole it. But those things, are not really impacting the nation. The diaspora has to organize itself, know its force, but we are so much into tribal connection and class, age, all of these little tiny things. So by the time we get to Liberia, the level of loyalty is gone. You got one loyalty to the family, you got one to the tribe, you got one to the county, you got every county got organized, but with no central thinking Liberian group. Besides you, EULA is there, but what does EULA do really? So we have to go beyond that. We have to have something here that forces the government to recognize the value of the diaspora as the middle class living in exile, that is still financing the government somehow, and still financing all these little shops that sell things to people. So that's my responsibility.
Jimmy, what role can the diaspora Liberian play in making that, their contribution, like the one I listed, more impactful?
Very good. I think my colleagues have narrowed it down already. When we send these remittances to Liberia, it's consumed, it's just largely consumed. It's not necessarily investment. And if you're not investing, Dennis, you're not building. You're not being productive. You just eat it. You eat your food. You go to the bathroom. It's done. But when you're making an investment, you are building. You are making more. You're trying to build a better future. So just what Dr. Dugley was just saying, the only way the diaspora will have a bigger impact with their investment is by organizing in networks and organizations. You see, these organizations and networks have to facilitate the coordination and mobilization of resources for various development projects. That way, we are providing a structured way to make contributions. It can't be willy nilly. It has to be structured. And we had just a few months ago. You remember, Dennis? We had somebody come on the show that they're trying to organize the diaspora in a way that um, they first go to the embassy. They have a bureau here at the embassy or the Bureau of the Diaspora. That way, that office can better organize people here and channel it directly to have a greater impact with the government over there. It's a very nice program. You remember those guys came on the show. I think it's one of the few brilliant ideas. But just
Mr.
like
Eastman, there's an embassy, there's an office at the embassy that was set up by Ambassador Minor back in 2003. I was working at the time. Yeah, there's an officer in charge of the diaspora.
right now, there is.
Yeah, there always been. I mean, somebody's always taking care of. Yeah,
Okay, well then
Ambassador.
that has to be promoted. That has to be brought to the attention of everybody here. Since I've been going to the embassy, I'm right downtown from the embassy, and this is the first to my knowledge. So
Wow.
it has not been active enough. If that is true, it has not been an active enough. It should be more instrumental in organizing Liberian, promoting Liberians' joint effort here, and then transferring that joint effort to various projects in Liberia. But just what I kind of was saying, these remittances that if they're consumed, it's gone. You have to target projects and make investment, not consumption, before it will have a better impact.
Mr. Salif, on the side of the government, what should the government do, or what can the government do so that whatever we're doing here can be more impactful? Because it looks like we are not, we're doing all this and it's been many years, but it's really not felt.
Oh, actually, before I answer that, there's an argument, counter argument to be made. It's not all this remittances consumed and there's no impact on the economy. Kanye said that there's minimal macro impacts, mainly micro. Oh, that may be true, but there are diaspora investments in Liberia, foreign direct investment. I mean, I know people who have serious real estate projects, people who have, service projects, clinics and schools, in private sector, private, diaspora groups. There are individuals who have ventured in agriculture. It's a difficult sector. There are all kinds of things. I mean, in the diaspora here, you all know the layers and the structures we have, right? Right up from EULA, you have county associations, you have alumni associations, you have these various network, ethnic groups, ethnic association counties, and so forth, districts to the district levels. And these are doing different projects that are really durable and long-standing that have impact on the economy overall. Now, in 2010, I believe it was, the IOM, International Organization for Migration, actually gave money to the government of Liberia, engaged the government of Liberia, or the government engaged with them, because IOM does that with other countries to devise strategies for diaspora engagement. Actually, there was the IDP, IDF, something like that, International Diaspora Development Funds. Through that, the government of Liberia under President Sirleaf, they initiated a diaspora office at the Ministry of State. There was a diaspora some feedback come. There was a diaspora bureau there. I don't know that Dukla would know more, but there was that intentional outreach to IOM investment, and in 2016. I read somewhere that the World Bank was initiating a program to engage with diaspora investors or people, Liberians who are interested in organizing, in engaging in serious economic FDI, direct foreign direct investment activities in the country. I don't know to what extent that happened, but there are those initiatives through the World Bank, through IOM that other countries take advantage of. Additionally, and I agree with you, it has to take a concerted efforts. I think in Kenya, they have it up to ministry like cabinet level. There's a bureau, Ministry of Diaspora Affairs. Same thing with India, Nepal. These
Ivory Coast,
right, Cote
Senegal.
d'Ivoire. Yeah,
Cote
exactly.
d'Ivoire has it, Senegal has it,
So yeah,
Nigeria, of course, yeah, yeah, all of them. In fact,
so it's a
everybody in ECOWAS has that of except Liberia.
So why don't we? Why aren't we taking our diaspora population seriously? Knowing that you talk about the middle class and the in the diaspora, all these capital, the knowledge base, and all kinds of things, and these are the things that created tensions and resentment, the pettiness, right? When people refer to those in the diaspora as educated, as having connections and resources. Of course, not everybody, particularly with the Civil War wave, but yes, there's serious, qualified Liberian professionals who are very successful who would like to invest back home, but again, because of the political climate, lack of security, rule of law, and corruption, some people hold back. When I worked in Liberia for 6 years for a donor government over there, uh, there were Liberians who returned, built hotels, businesses, restaurants. They started competing with the Lebanese and the Indians and so forth and so on. Then Ebola broke and some people left and started coming back. And then when President Weah took over, another wave left. So people sort of vacillate between Liberia and back in the U.S. And the final point I will make is about business climate, investment climate, doing business in Liberia. How easy is it? How receptive is the government and are the people to diaspora returnees investing and doing business in the country? It gets very complicated to register a company or a firm or business, get all the licenses and regulatory activities and then set up shop and really seriously begin to do business when you don't have to pay bribes or be duped or something like that. There are difficult stories about people just because you came from the diaspora with this investment initiative, something end up happening to you, or you were duped out of it, or you didn't really receive any good reception from your own government.
Thank you.
About the diaspora project that I mentioned, actually, the World Bank had committed $500,000, and the office was to be run by Raptail. I think you all know her, and then but she left, and the money was never used, and the office just you know blah blah blah.
Uh,
Dennis, I wanted to ask something to Brother Ahmad just said earlier.
go ahead.
I think with the Liberian diaspora and the way it has presented itself, this diaspora thing needs to be a two-way efforts. Like we just said earlier, I can tell you all the North African countries, their foreign ministries had a department that catered to their diaspora, and they do it in a very very organized way where they actually specifically target, they come up with an investment proposal that targets specifically only their diaspora, and so they make it part of their political they make it part of their economic agenda to attract those diasporas, like those wealthy diaspora nationals of theirs to come and invest, and those investments are reserved solely for for their diaspora citizens. And so that is one of the things that is lacking in Liberia, where sometimes Liberian, when they talk about diaspora investing, they target only Liberians in the United States. And so people always see it as only the Liberian diaspora that are targeted. And when you look at it, there are wealthy Liberians almost all over the place. But the government has not created a program where it specifically target diaspora Liberians for investment purposes. And of course, the diaspora Liberians also, it's not such that it's organized to create that kind of association where they can approach the investment in Liberia in a collective way. And when I mean collective way, I'm using that term loosely here, so that the impact can be felt. Otherwise, the daily sustenance is not something to be overlooked. The daily sustenance of Liberians that get these remittances from friends, relatives. So it only needs to be organized in a way that the government can come up with a program that will specifically target, there are wealthy Liberians in many places, target them with particular investments, and so that the impact can be felt and it can be seen, and it becomes part of your economic objectives, you
Right.
know. And I mean, in my opinion, that is what I see missing in terms of
Thank you.
encouraging Liberian
Government being
diaspora.
intentional. But there's a missing piece here. Thomas, if you use your 1 minute, and then I can.
No, I mean, yeah, I agree to the point that Ahmed was making. When we say remittances, it generally covers funds that are coming from people who are citizens of the country who are in the diaspora. So there are portions that go towards investment, but if you really split that 100 million, you will see that much of it goes towards basic needs,
Sustenance, yeah.
paying, yeah, sustenance. But it's also part of the economy, even though it goes out like Dr. Duke was saying, but it also drives the economy because consumption is a major portion of GDP of every country. Also, even though it's at the micro level, but if it goes towards education, for instance, it's building the human capital. And then eventually that human capital can contribute to growth. What I was basically trying to say was that if we bundle that amount, 100 million, to say we are doing one investment today, it will be a big investment. But because it's going into pieces, portion going to investment, portion going to consumption, it's difficult to really see that impact at the macro level. But in terms of what needs to be what needs to be done, I think over the past 20-25 years,
And Tom will come to that one. I
okay.
I have a separate one for that.
Yeah,
That
I just wanted to, Dr. Duke and Ahmed mentioned the structure in different countries.
okay,
I
go
just
ahead.
wanted to reinforce what they were doing. So in Nigeria, we have the Nigeria Diaspora Commission. It's an institution by itself, outside the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and outside the Ministry of State. That's how it is in Nigeria. In Kenya, we have the Kenya Diaspora Alliance. In Ethiopia, we have the Ethiopian Diaspora Agency. It's an institution all by itself. In Rwanda, we have the Rwanda Diaspora Directorate. So in Senegal, we have the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Senegalese Diaspora. In Mali, we have the Ministry of Malian Abroad and African Integration. In Sierra Leone, we have the Office of the Diaspora Affairs. In Liberia, we have the Diaspora Affairs, but it's under the Ministry of State
Yeah,
and it falls under the Deputy Minister for
our portfolio.
without portfolio. So what we have seen mostly in Africa is either it is in the foreign ministry or in the Ministry of State or it's a stand-alone institution. But the point I'm making is that we've seen more and more as Africa is improving governance, is becoming more stable. People are looking more towards the diaspora to see what role they can play. And as I conclude, Dr. Duke made a very critical point. The only diaspora people that are interested mostly in the country is the first generation because they went to school with people, they can still relate to the stories on how you went to school with folks in LU. So it's easy for you to release money when your classmates get to you, when your schoolmates get to you, when your community members get to you. So if Liberia cannot harness the best out of this first generation, when we move towards the third and the second and third generation, we should expect a reduction in remittances because these people are not really, they don't have fond memories of back home.
They
So I
don't
think
even know.
they don't know home. So let's just think that 20 years from now, they 100 million, maybe it might even drop to 20 million or 25 million. So I think this is the time the government needs to organize what it can organize to be able to really get the best out of the diaspora.
Right. Oh, wow. And we're talking about with a family. He said, his mother his mother will get behind him to send money to his siblings back home. He said, and then the guy will say, I have my children here, I have my, and he said, because of this, excuse my language, because of these animals, my children back home should not, they don't even consider the second generation, they don't care about them because they want that money to go back. So, but, and one thing that I've come up over and over as I listen to all of you is this kind of little rift, and will have a segment where we actually go into step by step what we can do to improve and make our contribution impactful. But let's talk about this tension or division between those in the diaspora and those back home. Is it something real? Is it perceived? Is it, and who or what is causing it? Because sometimes we try to build things that don't exist.
Dennis, we have somebody making comments that we do not entertain here. Darlington Sippy. Sippy, we don't insult any ethnicity here. We consider all ethnicities equal, and the comment you made, we will not entertain that. If any such repeat of that kind of comment, we will have to mute you
But
completely.
put a comment out. Let us hear.
No, he's black. It's so offensive. So I blacked him.
You shouldn't. I mean, this is public opinion. You should let him talk, and we can respond. Maybe he need education.
Yeah, that's not how you get education. Some things not worth pursuing.
Yeah.
So you expect him, man?
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't entertain that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have time to be maybe babysitting and correcting action. Then we don't have time. We have just
But Dennis, are we moving into the kind of tension that you're talking about? Can you give me 30 seconds? Let me just complete on the issue of mainstreaming the diaspora. There's also something happening on the political side. Maybe let me just take 30 seconds to just talk about it.
Okay, go ahead.
So, in addition to creating these institutions, other African countries, I think Dr. Du had mentioned this a couple of times, are also including the diaspora on the political side. So in Senegal, diaspora citizens actually elect members of their legislature. So out of 165 seats, there are 15 seats that are reserved for the diaspora. In Cape Verde, out of 27 seats, there are 6 seats that are reserved for the diaspora, and they elect them in 3 constituencies in the Americas, in Africa, and in Europe. In Algeria, the election is done by Algerian expatriates that are abroad. Out of 407 seats, there are 8 seats that are reserved for the diaspora. In Morocco, there is no seat that is set aside, but you can stay in the diaspora and contest for a representative position, and if you win, then you go back home and serve. And in Tunisia, they have different constituencies in France, Italy, Germany, America, and the Arab world. Out of 217 seats, they got 18 seats. So it's like you have institutions that can link you to the diaspora, and you also have them represented in the legislature. So that's what other African countries are doing.
Dennis, can I have this first one?
Whereas in Liberia, though, we're trying to actually make law to exclude Liberians for political participation.
That's right.
This so-called diaspora legislation that just passed to me is really unconstitutional. It restricts you. You can't become Minister of Justice. You can't become Minister. I think Chief Justice. You can't run for president. There are all kinds of.
You can't even run for representative or senator.
You can't run for elected office.
Certain positions.
It doesn't work in the Constitution. Does not allow that. Constitution does not allow two type of citizenship. Either you're a citizen or you're not. You can't have halfway citizens. I mean, that's like the colonial America.
So is that what contributing to the tension? So is the tension or
no, the tension? I think the tension is of value. It's about value. What the intellectual value that you have in the diaspora, you don't find it at home. That's the problem. So when you go back, you did your master's here, and the guy who did his master at Cottington, you can talk the same language about the same things, and he's on the ground, so he feels threatened or she feels threatened by you, and that's a reality. People feel threatened. I mean, people say things like, "Oh, you're coming to take our girls and taking our jobs, and then you fly back when you're tired with us." I say, you hear that. I mean, people say it jokingly, but it's true.
Hmm.
So you have the capital here, intellectual capacity, financial capacity, and also a culture of independent thinking and critical thinking. That you go home, you don't find it. You don't find it there.
Dr. Douglas, don't you think that's part of the problem where we come here and we think we all that?
Yeah, but no, but we are that. Why do why do you refuse to be what you are? We are educated. We do have jobs that pay us money to live. We do have time to think about these things, that city, and talk about these theoretical things. Liberian people don't have time for it. How many
No,
shows you watch? They don't have. They can talk about jobs, who stole money, who didn't steal money, but don't sit and talk about how do we transform the system because they don't have the time. You know what Karl Marx said? Only the petit bourgeoisie can lead a revolution because the poor people don't have time to think about a revolution.
They are
They,
busy
yeah,
making a
they're
living.
busy trying to live up, to
Yeah.
live, to make their living. So if you live here, you go with your $200 sneakers or your little hat or whatever, they say, "Oh, this is a threat. It's a threat to my job. It's a threat to my way of living. It's a threat to my stealing."
but then, Dr. Ducre, what do you say to emerging intellectuals who perhaps got a graduate education overseas and then went back home, who are based home, who are really actively, either through words or action, trying to exclude their counterparts who are intellectuals or emerging intellectuals? I'll give you an example. I won't call name, but when President Barker won the election and started appointing officials, one progressive young intellectual or young educator, Liberian citizen, wrote on social media, which I read, I was really shocked. The person said, President Barker is the first non-diasporic Liberian president. He said by electing the following individuals and named the individuals, President Barker has demonstrated that he's the first non-diasporic president who is solving homegrown problems with homegrown solutions.
Isn't that a problem now?
Now, this that's not. These are people who think like us. These are people who are educated, who are sophisticated, who are there's that class, right? So I thought there was a little bit of overgeneralization over there.
No, no,
But
no. I
yeah,
don't. I'm not generalizing. People who, there's a difference between people who came here long and stay long and live like Americans. Really, you have you have
mhm,
a house, you have a spouse, you guys have children. You go to the school meetings, you go to board meetings. You're involved in the, in the care of your neighborhood.
yeah.
That's different from somebody who get a scholarship and come here, live on the campus, do 2-year masters, and go back home. That person has not changed, but you have changed. That's the difference between you and him or her, because she came on a scholarship to go do a master's with a BA or something from Cottington or LU, and then run back home to get a job. And that person is like the same guy you left behind. They haven't changed. It's a psychological thing. That's, those are not diaspora people. Those are people who come and go back.
Yeah.
Diaspora people
And,
who,
and Jimmy, those who are back will say exactly that's the problem. That's why we resent you guys. Exactly what Dr. Douglas is saying.
yeah,
That's the
but,
reason.
but
That's why they feel threatened.
they feel threatened. And people who come and say, "Oh, yeah, my friend was at LU." I know a friend. I mean, I can say this. I say, "You need help with this program." Da da da. They say, "Well, when you guys come here, you make us look bad." Somebody
Well,
tell me that.
I've always advocated for this, even though I do know that the diaspora is important for the transfer of knowledge and skills to Liberians. But before we give them the right positions and whatnot, they have to kind of give back to the community first. They have to earn it, in other words. Yeah, you want to be minister, but first go teach at LU or simultaneously transfer some of that knowledge and skills to our counterparts. This will build a relationship between the diaspora Liberians and the local Liberians, and also will build up capacity, human capacity
So
in.
that comes from the structure that
I,
most of
I
you
did
spoke about
that,
earlier.
Jimmy. It didn't change, and it was 6 years. I worked in Liberia, volunteered, taught at a graduate school at the University of Liberia. Prior to moving to Liberia, I went home in 2007, 2008. My sister had directed me to the dean of the law school at the time, who wanted some books, and I took those books, and I looked at the library. I looked around. I was working for an organization that was connected with major law firms across the U.S. And Minnesota has the largest law books publishing company, Thomson Reuters, right across the river here in Egan. So I thought I could do something. I could, I could support. I could raise law books and research libraries and stuff. The dean looked at me and said, "You guys, you come sit here and ask me questions. You guys come from America. You think you have all the solutions? Say, go look around. Go look in the library. Go." And I did. I went to the library of the law school. I took pictures. I asked people. I interviewed students. I talked to people. I came back. I wrote a proposal. Books for Africa, Thomson Reuters, the Advocates for Human Rights, major organizations embraced it. Guess what? We raised $500,000 worth of law books, brand new, the books that they've been using for the last 10, 15 years or so. Over the library was practically empty, 1972, 73, case books and such. We raised the books, raised money from University of Indiana Law School, and shipped them. In fact, when my colleagues were going, they carried 2 suitcases of sample books, human rights libraries, and the dean called me. He said, "Salif, I thought you were joking." He said, "We had 10 Liberians in America like you. This country will change." He said, "Yeah, you are the people here." In fact, when the container arrived, we contracted over an NGO on the ground that cleared the container, brought it on the university campus. That's when the dean called me. It took me 3 months to get that man to send me the list of courses they do at the law school, just so that we could select the books and ship them home. 3 months. He didn't believe me. So I taught there. We've done things like that. It still doesn't change the dynamic. Now, I'm not here to say diaspora Liberians, professionals who went home, or so-called professionals under President Sirleaf, for instance, were all top-notch professionals at their trade. Some of them weren't. Some couldn't even write a simple report. And there are young people in Liberia, very well educated, very well technically inclined, to produce for you any kind of basic, day-to-day work operational thing, PowerPoint and so forth, and spreadsheet. They will do that for you. Some folks from here can't do that, and yet they were being paid high salaries. So all of these things contributed to the tensions and the resentment. But the point is, what you're suggesting, some of us have done those things, but still the pettiness is there, the resentment is there, this exclusionism, this exclusion is still there. I don't know what is really simmering this division and this thing about diaspora versus us at home.
Pure economics.
Mr. Boaga Dukley,
Yeah,
is that perceived? Is it real? Is it happening? And what is responsible?
of course it is real. It is happening.
Who is
Look,
responsible for that, or what is responsible for that?
I will apportion a bigger blame on those of us that are in the diaspora. We account for a big portion of it. You see, there are little things that we take for granted here. And if you go to Liberia, I mean, and I'm not saying that's how everybody behaves. No, but even if you are well intentioned, like Brother Ahmad was just talking about what he did, that dean, people are living with preconceived notions about diaspora Liberians and diasporans in general. And the notion, that preconceived notion is, we always come there and look down upon them. We don't see them for who they are. We don't value them. We always think that we are better than they are. And to some extent, some of us who come from the diaspora, we do behave and exhibit those tendencies. And people see them, the way we spend our money, the way we, when we go to the bar, the way we display our little, whatever money we have, the clothes we wear, the way the way we carry ourselves. People see them, and you are talking about people who can afford $10 a day. I was talking to somebody, and I said to them, I said, one thing I noticed, people in Liberia, uh, most of them have cell phones, but they can't afford to sustain those phones. They can't, like, they can't. And he said to me, Duke, let me break it down for you in terms of economics. Let's say $1 per day. That's what you would need. So let's say $30 per day. There are not too many people in Liberia that can afford $30 per month. This is just, simple basic math here. So we go there, you from the US, you from France, and you buying $10 scratch card. You don't buy $1 scratch card. People buying 50 cents, 25 cents scratch card, and you are buying $5. You are buying $10. It's almost like you are robbing their poverty right in their face. So, and I'm not saying that's what, or that's how everybody behaves.
And
No.
so what do you do in that instance? D2S because you're hungry, I should eat?
No. Look, Dennis. Look, I will tell you something. When I pay my first visit to Liberia, my brother has a diamond selling place somewhere on Randall Street, and then I show up there. There is usually a park with people. And my brother, I told my brother, tell them I'm from Cairo. I'm from Egypt. Anyways, so one day, somebody in the office there noticed. He said, "Big brother, how come you don't ask the people coming from America?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, when people come from America, they are drinking alcohol or they are drinking only mineral water. So people have that perceived notion of the diaspora from someone they have seen, from someone they have dealt with, from someone they have spoken to. And so they ascribe that behavior to anyone who is coming from the diaspora, who is coming from overseas. So I think you guys have seen the comedians in Liberia depicting the what is it? Decemberies, they call them? The Decemberies, you put the towel on your shoulder and then the trouser is hanging halfway. So all of these things have impact on them because we always see them as the others. We are better than them. We like a big brother was saying just now that you have a master's degree from the States, you go to Liberia, somebody got master's degree, you look down upon them. You don't see them as equal because you have the same level of education. It's ingrained. It has become our way of thinking in Liberia. It has become part of our pop culture where, as long as you're from America or as long as you're from overseas, you are thinking that you are better than us. So it's now become our way of thinking, Dennis. So that's why I said I think those of us that come from the diaspora, we contribute significantly to this preconceived notion that our compatriots have.
Thank you, Tom. When we talk about this, I want to call it so-called resentment. Sometimes it's only felt in the urban area or in Monrovia for political reasons. If I went home now and I go to Dodrican, starting from a mountain town nuclear, they will carry me on their shoulders. They don't see me as the other. The same way they will see me maybe because they see that I want to become representative. So there is
superintendent.
Even a superintendent, someone say a superintendent, then the dynamics will change. So is this really because of political reason? Because they don't treat you the same way if you go there as a regular person.
I think, Dennis, generally the issue of all of these things that we are talking about, to me, I think I go back to what Dr. Duke was saying. To me, there are two issues I think here. It's competition over power and competition over resources. Because if you come from here, you come with a master's degree in many instances, and this is fair. I mean, you see why CEOs in this country are paid a lot of money because people are educated, they are able to manage resources. So based on the education that you come from outside Liberia, the expectation is that you are going to be paid higher. And that kind of competition over resources can come. It's also with the issue of power. Because you see power and economic, they are often interrelated. When you have economic strength, it's easy to get power, especially in a country that is that poor. So there are people who have power, but they don't have the economic resources, they will not open the window easily for you to be able to exercise your economic strength to be able to get the power away from them. But coming back to the point you were raising on the issue of your village, you see, nationally, those that are outside Liberia are considered the diaspora.
That's a city. One we just got a new city.
Yeah. So those who are outside Liberia are the diaspora for Liberia. Also, when you go internally, those who come from Grand Crew and come to Monrovia, they are in the diaspora for Grand Crew. And I think those tendencies can still be there. You don't remember going to your village and you are passing, look, the guys are saying, oh, they may because they feel they come from Monrovia. It is still there. It will be there. There will be guys who think that you've gone back to the village to just go and take their wives from them, like Doug was saying. So I think it's just human nature. The competition over power, competition over resources will always be there, whether it's with the village, it's between the village and the town. You can imagine even when you might have left your village to go to high school, and when you used to go back, there are always this competition that is going on. But I think for me, this is something where the state need to pay attention to see if there are these little frictions that are ongoing that is undermining the national development and growth. Can we address these things by setting up the institutional framework to be able to do it? Because one other thing besides the political inclusion, besides the institutions, one of the things that we are seeing country doing now is to issue these diaspora bonds. Like they want to build infrastructure, they want to respond to humanitarian crisis, they can issue a diaspora bond to say this bond that we are issuing, our people who are out there who have money can buy it, it provide capital for the country to be able to move forward with development. Because I think when we move forward with development, we expand the private sector, jobs are created. Who got time for you? You can wear your white towel, you fast whole day, nobody get time for you. But like Mr. Ducle was saying, when you are only a guy on the block who can buy 20 bottles of beer, you're almost like everybody is looking around when you're around. So I think the more we can grow and develop, the more these things can be minimized. So I think the state should take this as a project. And let me just conclude on this. The former Minister of Agriculture, she was investing in the agriculture sector before she became agriculture minister. At one point, we had this a workshop on a project that I was managing. And she made a point that was very important. She said when she wanted to invest, she went to the National Investment Commission and asked, what are the framework that you have in place to be able to protect Liberians that want to invest? Like, are there any incentives that you provide and all of that? And she said they're worried because all of our investment incentives are designed to attract foreign direct investment. So if you're even a Liberian and you want to go and invest back home, are we giving you incentives to encourage you to be able to do that? Or we are only targeting the big multinational investment companies that are out there? So to me, let's agree that the friction is there, but as a state, just like any conflict, can we resolve this to be able to tap into the resources that are in the diaspora so that we can use it to develop the country to move forward and to also bring improved coexistence rather than us seeing ourselves in little brackets.
Thank you.
Dennis, to the question about you're not a threat to your village people when you're going to see them. You bring something to them. They might get a T-shirt, drink beer with you late night, or but you're not threatening their status. You bring something to them, so they'll be happy to carry you on their back for 10 miles. But in the city, if you went to Monrovia, you go to the Ministry of Internal Affairs now, 2-3 times next week, somebody will be calling, sign and say, you know what, they make him from America, he going into the ministry every day, maybe he after your job.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you go to your village, they'll carry you. They say, yeah, our son came back. And then maybe he brought something. Maybe he didn't bring nothing, but he came back. They're happy to see you. That's a connection that you have with your people. That's not broken by money because they're not yet corrupted by this, fight about job and money and power.
Thank you.
And then
And
there's
then,
a difference.
Thomas, about your minister. Yeah, she didn't get, there was no incentive to give people money to protect the diaspora. So she went and took her own. And that's why she got indicted, right? That's another problem with the diaspora. They say we steal.
Yeah.
Which is true. That is true in many cases.
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
we just go take some and then come back to America.
Yeah.
Let's face it.
Yeah.
There's some truth in what we have promoted some of these beliefs. The ill action of some people have promoted this. And Duke said something correctly that the real difference is economics. We go there, we got car, we got flamboyant, we're traveling. Do people them they don't see the light of day.
Yeah.
So it's understandable. Look at I will let me name something. Look at the story of Ellen Cochran.
Yeah.
Look at that. Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, I can't believe she had that kind of education and training. A colonel in the U.S. Air Force,
Yeah.
and then you go get besmirched in all kind of corrupt. The people just go to the steal, and I don't understand that. I
And
don't know
she
if
came
because
back here to steal.
yeah, because if you really qualify in this country, maybe I'm wrong. You do correct me if I'm wrong. You will make good money.
Yeah, you will.
You will make good money. You will not make less than $100,000 if you
Yeah.
qualify.
Yeah.
You're not.
Yeah.
Okay. So why have you have to go down there and steal? I don't understand it. You know,
People
when you
go,
go there,
you know,
And that takes us to the step to
But
what
Dennis,
makes sense. What can we do?
let me just say there's a difference when you go and visit the people in the village and come back. When you're going to go settle in the village,
They will not carry you. They will not carry you.
they say, where you getting back from? What happened to
Yeah, I wanted to say that. Yes, you go settle down there. You're in a competition, man. You're part of the, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Then the dynamic
You're
changes.
scaring me now.
Yeah.
just go, Dennis.
Jimmy, the corruption, though, maybe in the nature of that individual that's stealing, because folks back home corrupt, stealing, folks who are leaving from here, some corrupt, stealing. So it's a different phenomenon. I think.
And actually, just to buttress what you're saying, it still goes back to what we're doing, right? So, what if you have rules for stealing, whether the person is from the diaspora or local, you punish them the same way. But if we're
Yes.
not doing that, then that's another story. Let me announce that this Sunday we're going to have our Independence Day program. Uh, every year, Focus on Liberia will have a virtual Independence Day program this year. And this year is on Sunday at 4 p.m. The theme for this year is the role of education in nation building. Educator Cisse Goya is our orator. So please tune in. It's happening this Sunday at 4 p.m. Let's discuss practical ways that we can have the diaspora community or the Liberians in the diaspora make the most meaningful impact. What needs to happen? What can Liberian diaspora do? People in the diaspora do? What can the citizens of Liberia do? What should the government be doing? And I like the examples of we gave here about Liberians being in the legislature. I mean diaspora Liberians, they have seats. So let's list some practical things here. Let me start with Mr. Shirley. You can talk about what the government can do, what diaspora Liberians can do, what the citizens can do. In 2 minutes, give me some. You don't have to say all.
Well, it will start with sort of mental matters, shift, the mindset, attitude shift. The government can promote some positive things about what in the diaspora could do to benefit, to contribute significantly to the growth, social, economic, cultural, and political growth of the country. So that whatever proposal, policy, prescriptions that the government advances, people will be receptive to it. Some of the ideas that Thomas, share with us from these other countries, I assume they didn't just happen overnight, right? It will take really educating the diaspora and educating folks back home. Look, when the Truth Commission came to the diaspora, they said it was the first time a truth commission, a commission of that nature, had systematically engaged its diaspora population. Even the commission didn't believe they could do that, right? But we encouraged them, and they tried it. It worked. You came around here, we brought them to They conducted public hearings. People here participated. So we can do that. We can include Liberians on the political side. We can include Liberians on the economic side. We could have a friend of mine, for example, and I were having a conversation. He said, look, by the resentment thing, we could establish the Liberian Diaspora Institute. And this Liberian Diaspora Institute will study various, will collaborate with the government, maybe conduct studies or educate people about the potentials for investment, the potential for education, and also political inclusion and how that might happen. Right, there are various things we talked about. I mean, I can share everything here right now, but there are ideas and there are things that are very feasible that can be done. Right, representation in legislature, that is far-fetched, because if you have a law that says you can't even run for office just because you've attained citizenship in another country, though you didn't really leave the country at your own volition, under difficult circumstances for most people still, there's that pettiness, not based on substance, not based on policy. It's just based on envy and jealousy, competition over power, competition over resources, sometimes perceived. So to me, in our specific case, we have to be realistic and start with debunking some of these myths, educating folks, really trying to build cohesion and bring people together around ideas and possibilities. You're on mute, Dennis. We can hear you now.
Jimmy,
Mhm.
what can we do?
Okay.
Why should the government do?
So
Why should the citizens do? Pick one.
obviously, the $600 gorilla in the room is lack of trust and mutual understanding. There's a lack of trust. The way you build trust is you have to participate in activities together and events. That will only way you'll start building trust. You have to interact. So there has to be a more interaction, not official, not at the office level, but like an organization that encourages local and diaspora interaction, because that is the only way it's going to happen. The other thing to do,
But Jimmy, we have that already. All the county organizations, alumni associations, all these people interact with their counterparts and fellow Liberians in Liberia. So we have those already, don't you think?
you know why I noticed? Let me even put it. You know why I noticed when you know somebody or somebody know you and them, let's say you and them went to school together. When you go back, you don't have problem. It's the people who don't know you, the people who have not met you before. They just know you came from America. Those are the people there's this no connection. So we go to the familiar channels where we already have built bridges. Bridges are already built, but we need to start building bridges between people who are unfamiliar. Like I said, there has to be more interaction with, not based on I'm not even tribe, not based on school or things like that, because that is already developed, but completely based on some sacrificial. Let me tell you what happened in Ethiopia. After when they had the revolution, the Ethiopian people they had an educational problem. A whole lot of the Ethiopians were not well educated. They made it so that what they did was they had everybody who wanted to get their degree. Before you got your degree, you have to go teach in the interior for 2 years. Then you come back to the university, then you can get your degree. That produced a synergy between the university students and the people in the interior. That cultural exchange, because we are culturally different. Somebody mentioned it. I mean, you stay here 20 some more years, you develop a different kind of culture. So you have to intermingle. People have to know your way, who you are. That's how we will develop more trust between the groups.
Thank you, Tom. As you are listening, what being done in other countries, I'm asking myself, why aren't we doing this? Is it that we don't know? We're not interested? They don't work? Why? And what can we do now going forward?
Like I said initially, I mean, is this a competition over resources and power? I mean, these things that are being done is like you are decentralizing power, you know? So now before a law passes in your legislature, there will be somebody in America who will have to agree. And we're talking about all the intellectual strength. We want to review the law from the beginning to the end before they can pass it. And the guys want several of them to pass the national budget. Are they going to be waiting for you to finish your review? So there is always this issue of closing the door so that the movement can be done at your own pace. But like I was saying, we're supposed to look at the bigger picture. There's a window here that is closing. Are we going to move on this gradual pace until the next 20, 30 years? And then we got no diaspora citizens that are interested in Liberia. Even though the dual citizenship law, I think it covers the children that people are born in, right? Once you were a Liberian citizen, it also covers your children. But like that was saying, would they be interested? So I think this is where the state, for me, is the state that needs to see that there is a resource here. And you can see when elections are coming, politicians come here, they raise money from here, Philadelphia chapter, this other chapter. And like you were saying, to even put all of this together is easier because all the associations are in chapters. You have the university associations, you have the county association, you got ULA here, even in Europe. Can you imagine, even when Henry Costa started his, how did he call his movement?
COP.
COP, there was already a COP in Europe.
We interviewed them here.
Yes, there's a COP chapter in Europe. There's a COP chapter in Australia.
We call them global, COP global, ANC global.
Yeah. So if there is even if there are people going to Mars in the next 10, 15 years, you will have those chapters going to Mars. So to me, the state can use those cells and those units to be able to put them together. But in terms of what we can do, we already passed the dual citizenship law. We say people are, regardless of where you are a citizen. We have a provision in the constitution for people to vote in abstention. Can we start for people who are outside the country, whether you are outside the country for education, for as an economic migrant, or you stay here for 20, 25 years, can we allow people to start voting? Other countries are doing it. Let the people in the diaspora vote. There's also something that other countries have started to pilot. Eritrea is doing it. They call it diaspora taxes. People in the diaspora pay taxes. So it's no longer remittances that are voluntary. You send it when you want to send it. You do some little bit of taxes. Because for me, as a tax person, it is not fair to those in Liberia to pay taxes to develop the country, and you are a citizen, you are outside the country, and you go and use the facilities. When it comes to taxation, it has to be equitable. So allow people
You pay
to
taxes when you enter the country to use the resources, though. I mean, the different tax structures, Thomas. I'm not a tax expert as you are, but that's arguable. That's number one. Number two, if you design a law that's discriminatory, that says your citizenship, you're a second class citizen effectively, right? You can't run for office, you can't be this, you can't be that, you can't be this. I mean, tell me, what kind of citizenship is that? Citizenship has rights and obligations, and none of that's respected.
that's what I'm saying. I'm putting it on the shoulders of the state to be able to resolve these issues. Because the point is, why do you say someone is a citizen, for instance, and they can't vote? So people in the diaspora should be able to vote. My point is, can we go back to that law and review it and look at the benefits that it comes with? To say even if it is $1 or $2, we say pay in taxes. Like for instance, the US is our greatest partner. Can we negotiate with them to deduct that from your tax responsibilities if you pay taxes to Liberia? But my point I'm making is that there are different forms of taxes. Income tax is different. What you pay when you get to Liberia is you pay for it's not compulsory. You go to a restaurant, you eat, you will pay. You will pay you will pay taxes for what you are eating there. But you're not paying taxes on your income. People in Liberia are paying taxes on their income in addition to what they are paying, which is what they are using to build the road, to build the school. And when you go, we don't stop you from using the road. Everybody uses it. Everybody uses everything that is there. So I'm just saying that the government should look at the diaspora as an asset and see
Yeah.
the different reforms that we can make, but
Mm,
overall to improve governance. Because
Right.
if the diaspora bonds, for instance, you issue it, who's going to pay when you have the legislatures going for retreat and taking that amount of money? Nobody will do it. So, like Jimmy said, first improve trust, and the way you do it is to improve governance, and then all of these other things can follow, so that we can really be able to push the development of the country forward.
Dr. Dugley.
Yeah, what we can do, I think we need to organize. Beyond the personal or ethnic, whatever you call it, association and stuff. I think we need to have structured way, because the question you asked at the beginning of the show, which is the importance of the diaspora. What do we, what's our role? What do we do? How do we? I think the idea is if you spend $100 million in one place as a group, maybe 10, 20, $15 million can be put into some kind of land development for diaspora housing, like they do in Ghana. Eritrean paid, if you are Eritrean in the US, if you go and you want to renew your passport, they say, okay, where is your US tax return from last year? And then they look at it and they charge you 2% of what you pay to the US government to Eritrea. That's if you want to keep your citizenship. And some embassies, I work at the embassy for like 4 years. Some embassies have ID card, consular IDs that they give to the citizen, $5, $10, depending on the cost. And that money means that $10, $20 means that you still participating in the country economy. So those are countries that vote, that allow the citizens to vote. But we don't have that. So, but we need to have something formal, like organize, let that, I don't know, you like can organize something, but it has to be sit with the government and say, this is what we want as a diaspora. Now, don't just come, at time elections or when you go to your agricultural break and you fly to Washington to go do your agricultural break when your hometown is in Plibo. Sit with the government and say, we want to engage you because we know our power. We know what we have in the exterior. How can we participate formally in the government process? Don't be shy about it, because people go. Either Boakai pick up people. Boakai did pick up people from diaspora. I know at least 3 people who went from here to go work for the government. So it's not, it's not that strange. But instead of that kind of recruitment, can we sit with the government and say, you know what? This is what we need. This is how we want to be part of the government, or we want to be part of the governance system. If the government says no, then you say, okay, we don't have to do anything. If the government says, okay, you do that, but anybody who wants to keep renewing the Liberian passport must pay $5 extra, etc. That you pay some kind of taxes when you go home, but you have to have the right to vote. You have to have the right to represent your people in the House. And you can be Minister of Justice. I don't see the problem. So people left and went to Yugoslavia and became president with double citizenship, and they did very well. I think there's a fear of the stranger. That's it's like in the
Yeah.
Liberian psyche. There's a fear for the stranger. One time I asked somebody from an old man who was talking in Maryland. He said, we're scared of the sea. I said, why? He said, because everything bad that came to us came from the sea. So it's part of our thinking. So I think we have to break down the barriers, and then probably Boakai is open to it. Well, sit down with Boakai. Send a delegation, not here. Don't sit here and let Boakai come on vacation or medical checkup or whatever, and they say, oh, we meet with the president for 10 minutes. No, go to Monrovia, organize a symposium, a real discussion on formalization and say, this is what we want. We have 300,000 in the US. But what do we do? How can we get together? How can we organize something that help the government, help us, and also make people see themselves as part of the country? Not just somebody you come to when you need money to run your relation, you need strategy, you want paper written, and you want something in the newspaper, you say, can you write me an article, and da. No, we have to go beyond that. We have to really sit down with the government and say, and you can do this. not just small meetings, but go on the ground, organize a seminar, force the government to sit down with you. Say we are 300,000, you're not going to leave us outside because we contribute to the process on the ground. But
Okay, but
it's,
Dr. Douglas, you talk about being scared of the stranger, right?
yeah.
But the stranger is wearing Bukuman clothes, so what do you expect?
Yeah.
Dennis, they actually used that expression during the election 2017. I was in Liberia, and a very prominent religious leader wrote in the newspaper all against the diaspora. And I went to have a conversation with him. He said that's when they were doing the referendum. He said the people they don't want strangers. Say they don't. They want not.
Yeah.
We're telling the people not to vote for strangers, not to elect strangers. They vote. I said, who are the strangers? He said, people like you are tourists. You come on tourism, and then you go. After 2 months, you go. After 6 months, you go. You come 1 year. You're here. You're running for office. You are a stranger. See, so yeah. So Jimmy, I agree
Yeah.
that trust piece and that
Mhm.
mentor, the mentorship thing, because you see people in the legislature, people who are trendsetters in policy studies, we call it trendsetters. You mean you're good, those were good offices. You may not have a formal title, but when you say something, it makes the news. It could end up being a legislation. It could end up being some kind of policy, some regulation somewhere. You have to be self-aware when you are operating like that in the society, calling your own citizens, one group of them strangers, or the people don't want, so telling people not to vote for strangers and things like that.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching and want to participate, please call 605-313-6004. The code is 791-403 #. We have a
Well,
caller
give me
on the
30
line.
seconds, 1 minute, John.
Yeah, hold on. I want to
What?
go to Wakai first.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the Doctor and Brother Ahmad touched on something. I think that lays in the as the core of what I think that needs to be dealt with is this fear. And you can see the discriminatory laws that were passed is based on that fear. Yeah, we'll let them be part of us, but we'll restrict them from these places because they feel that those are the places where they come, because most of the people perception is built from diaspora Liberian being, engaging in the government or being
Yeah.
part of the government. That's where
These people have so much power. Why should, example, Darius Delon or
yes,
Edwin Snow be
yes.
afraid? They have power, they have money, they are millionaires. But what are they afraid of?
No, you just mentioned a few individuals, and those few individuals don't represent the entire country. So
But are they
yes,
afraid?
yes, yeah, they are powerful. They might not be a threat, but there are others who are a threat. And again, I mean, then it's not secret. But this, in order to alleviate this fear, it must come from both parties. Liberian government
Yeah.
need to engage the diaspora seriously, and the diaspora need to engage the Liberian government seriously. And then from there we can go to the local level, like you were talking about all these various counties having their, associations. And then you can expand it beyond that, to the churches, to the mosque, to the schools, etc. And engagement of such will bring more awareness. And like Brother Jimmy said, people say these things about people that they don't even know them, or they've never interacted with them to get to know them on a personal level. So these are the little things that might begin to take roots, and then people will start shifting their mind, or they will start getting better understanding of. And it's not everybody who is coming from the diaspora wants to be part of the government. No, it's not everybody who's coming from the diaspora wants to be Liberian ambassador somewhere. No, so we are just as diverse as the people that are in the country. So we need to engage. We need to diversify our engagement to reflect that differences at every level. In the schools, in the churches, like I was saying. So I mean, it does require effort from both parties, those of us in the diaspora as well as the government, because I think if the government, one of the ways they can do this, they can allocate representation for us. Like Brother Kenneth just mentioned, a few countries that have representation for the diaspora. That will be a very positive beginning, through whom we will be able to educate some of our compatriots as to us not being threat to them. We are just like them. We just happen to be fortunate to be overseas.
Thank you. I mean, look at the land issue before you buy one piece of land. But let me, we have a caller who's been waiting for like 10 minutes. So let me bring in Flomo, and then Jimmy, you can talk. Mr. Livingston, you're alive.
Yeah, hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm listening. Thanks to the panelists. I mean, there are some great points. I mean, well, hey, Mr. Jai, if you see the government right now, most of the people are working in the government living their diasporas and the work in the government currently, like ministers and some are representatives and senators who currently serving in Liberia. But I don't know why they really kind of afraid to pass that law. For me, I think we should have a referendum where the citizens can vote on that instead of it just going through the legislation, because you never know. Another government can come and want to change it. But at least when we have faith like a referendum where the citizens vote for it, it's in the constitution, at least that will be protected. And now for me, I don't think it's better protected, because another government or president can come and influence the legislation and they can change it. So to have all that into place, I think we the diaspora will have to be willing to pay some taxes towards the government coffers. Like, for example, if we want to have other privilege, like to have a seat, to be able to take them to have certain position in the government, or run as a senator or vice president, the president as a whole, I mean, we need to pay taxes. So, for example, let me say it will be charged maybe $500 every year. I mean, let me just say, for example, you have about 300,000 that brand that first. Every time that that people money that be going to the government coffers. I mean, that way we can have voices that we want to put. I mean, we want to put here to at least we can register and do that. But before we do that, at least they all pay some taxes. They all be willing to pay taxes towards the country. That way, that willing there to help develop the country. Grateful.
Thank you. So what needs to happen first? There is this talk, and Jimmy, before you come in, about diaspora people in government. It's been happening since the days of President Sully, right? So does it matter how they got there? It's like, okay, you have to be. I mean, we saw it during the President Weah's time. Now President Bouakai, where to be that diaspora person, and you borrowing the language of Chairman Tapper, you have to swim in the poo-poo water for the person who's getting power. So if you get the job that way, does it really count as the diaspora representation? I don't know. Maybe I'm not even asking the question correctly. Because we always say, yeah, the legislators are from the diaspora, we have ministers from the diaspora, but they got there through their proximity to whoever is in power, or the political party that sometimes at some point become like a court. So it doesn't matter how they got there, Jimmy.
How they got there, let me try to answer that question. I think it does matter, because if it's through favoritism and not merit, you will be owing to the person who gave you the job. And that gives me a chance to introduce this. Excuse me. We are not making best use of our diaspora, because not only because we are afraid of them, but those who in power, there is a culture that has been established in Liberia, a culture that is exploiting the country in all kinds of ways, a culture of corruption. And they don't want you to come there and change that. So when the diaspora will definitely start influencing that, and they don't want you to change. When you go there and you go near enough and be a part, I know you might have come, but when you go up there and try to be a part of that, you will find out that either you play the game like that, or you will not be liked. You will be ostracized. You have to play their game, and everybody's doing it. So we see resistance to that, because they are continuously taking advantage of the people. Let me just give you one example that all of us know. They passed a law or whatever the other day that each of them supposed to get $150,000. What Senate legislature in the world does that?
To
They
go
are
do
taking,
projects.
huh?
To go do projects.
Yeah, to go do projects. You know what projects to do? What is the Ministry of Public Works for? What is the Investment Commission? Or when the people do that, they just giving themselves more money. So they have got the people in a lock. They lock, they pull people down, and they're just doing all kinds of things, and they don't want nobody to change that.
Thank
But
you.
let me just land with this last part. But let's face it, a lot of agitation has come from the U.S. Marcus Matthew, them, and Charles Taylor, Ellen Johnson, Sully. All these people were agitating from abroad. But there's also this culture too that we have to break over there, and they're not willing to allow it to be busted. And they will push us out if we try to do it. So there's that other battle we will have to fight.
Thank you. Gentlemen, thank you so much. We have 10 minutes to close. So we'll use this time for closing comment. And in that closing comment, I want you to describe for me the role of the Liberian diaspora and what we can do for that to be more impactful so that we can see more results. You
Can I
can
go first?
wrap it up. Yes, sir.
I think we summarized pretty much what we need to do. We need a structure. We need something that works along with government to go beyond, these remittances and have, a voice not only in the governance but also, in everything. That you have an official voice in the governance process, and that cannot be done unless the diaspora itself, goes beyond the agenda that we have in EULA, but really transform EULA into something bigger that reaches out to all corners of governance, and then go to Liberia and set up something and say, okay, diaspora is going to do this. Maybe we need to pay a diaspora officer in the president's office so that we take care of our problems. Maybe that's a start. Pay somebody, say we all contribute to pay one person to be at the president's office to take care of our businesses and all of that. But definitely there's a need to have a structure and go beyond this, everybody floating, 300,000 people in the US, $100 million going back. But as I say, it goes through the door and it goes through the window to do things. But definitely we need to do something. And I thank you.
Thank you. And there's a culture there, right? Because you will have someone, it happened to me, right? Because, I'm always engaging people to come on the show. And we have this diaspora guy in the president's office. I'm not going to call his name. And we want him to come on the show and talk about what they're doing. And he said he's not going to be on any show until 1 year later. So I'm asking myself, okay, why would these guys, they know better, they know what to do, but why is it that when they get there, they change? They're completely different.
No, you know why he's saying that because there's no real project, there's no real thing to talk about. All these those that you take care of the diaspora. So letter comes, they give it to you, you read it. If the president need to respond, you write the response and then you send it out. But there's no program. It's just talk, talk, talk. The only person who really tried to organize something was Rotel. And Rotel was there. She was in charge of it, trying to get the World Bank to commit and all of that. And then she fell up with the president for somehow. And then, maybe she left. But she did leave. So that whole project going down. But since then, you come in and say, oh, yeah, you take care of the diaspora. You write letters, you read letters. That's all they do. They
No,
don't have a
this
program.
person is actually working in the president, not
Yeah,
for
but the
but they
president
are
can't tell
not
me nothing.
representative of what you would expect. So that even if you have someone like the one you talk about that we should pay, when they get there, they are different, because they don't want to lose the job or something. Dr.
No, if we
Mr.
paying
Duque.
them, if we paying them, they will keep the job.
Okay. Mr. Ducle, you're closing.
Then the culture in there is overwhelming and it's hard to resist. So when you are here, talk is cheap. You can say whatever you want, but then once you get on the ground and you find yourself surrounded by these monsters, then you are the only one. And I don't
But
mean
why
that.
do you attract hyenas and monsters?
Well, because that is just the culture. That's what it is.
Because you came from here.
Exactly. That's just what it is. Then you can't, it's like you want to be the only clean man in the office. Yeah, right. So just wait. So oh, how long can John stay in the army? Just wait. You know, and sooner or later you will fall. So I mean, we as diaspora, we just maybe let's start at our individual level to see if we can engage at our level, and who knows? I mean, with the number of us that are overseas, if we start engaging with the intention of wanting to be part of uh, our homeland, the way that we can be more impactful, I think you can make a difference as an individual. I mean, but to speak of the kind of impact you're speaking about, that requires, like I said, it requires a lot of efforts on both ends. Those of us that are going to be going, and to the people that we're going to be engaging ourselves with.
Thank you. Tom.
Yeah, good show. I think for me, it's the government that needs to see this as an opportunity and be able to really critically assess this, do a cost benefit analysis of what benefit can we get if we are able to really have a diaspora that we can tap into and redirect their resources towards development. And in that case, it has to be a give and take, like we said from the beginning of the show. So if we want them to maybe invest in road construction in the country, why don't we give to them? Okay, let's allow them to vote. It is always the case in governance. There will always have to be incentives for people to do something. There are some incentives that they need to get. But I think, like everyone has been saying from the beginning, is often the diaspora is seen as okay a source of campaign finance. During campaign, everyone will come and raise money, but then the next 6 years of governance, there is no intentional approach and programs to be able to tap into the diaspora. One thing we have not mentioned here is the emergence of the internet. I think it's making the whole world to be a little village. I don't think the way we are focused on Liberia today was the same case like in the 1960s and 70s. When you left, you couldn't easily talk to even your family members because it was difficult to communicate. It was difficult to know what is happening on the ground. But see what is happening. There's an accident today, and in the evening, it's a topic on focus on Liberia. So people are in the diaspora as if they are on the ground because everything that happens, you get to know about it. People in the diaspora are much more closer to the country today. So I think the government just need to look at everything that is happening today, just as they are trying to reform the state. Let this be part of the project of reforming the state and developing the country. So I think I would say the government should analyze this, maybe have a specific project on this, get researchers together to be able to research what is happening in other countries on how they are doing it, and then we can be able to do it. But I will conclude that the only way you are going to use resources from outside to promote development in the country, especially from the diaspora, you have to improve governance and get rid of the mismanagement of resources that is often seen in the government. If that happens, you build trust, and then you can then be able to use resources to be able to channel them towards development. Thank you.
Thank you. Even in church, if you're paying the tithe and you're not saying hey or te, some people are stopping, their tithe. No matter how you preach that Malachi 3:13, nobody will pay tithe. So I agree with what you're saying. Tomorrow is our Independence Day. That's July 26th, Independence Day. And so today, Focus on Liberia was carrying on an Independence Day trivia, going in the street and asking people.
First question to you is the Liberian legislature is divided into two houses called the upper and lower house. Which is the upper house and which is the lower house?
Uh, Firstly, the upper house are the House of Senate, while the lower house is the House of Representatives.
All right. That young man got the answer right, and he got a dollar scratch card. So focus on Liberia will be doing testing the knowledge, and so focus on Liberia History Channel partnering with the Liberian Leadership Academy. Every month we're going to be carry on this kind of trivia in the street, just to encourage them, because the young people of the Leadership Academy, they are getting out to link up with their colleagues plus our FOL reporters, and we'll be coming to our audience. That's going to cost us at least $100 a month to do that program. We pay the young people way to get in the street to get water to drink, and then we buy a scratch card dollar just to give to people who answer the question correctly, and it's just $100, right? So we'll be coming to our audience to say at least support 1 month of the focus on Liberia street trivia. Let me call it that way. We don't have a name yet. Today was the first day, and it was beautiful. Jimmy, you're closing.
Yeah, this is something we have to get done. Diaspora involvement has affected the rise of several nations. I can name, look at Israel, look at Rwanda, all these places. The diaspora was very instrumental in bringing it back up. We will have to definitely need infrastructure to do it. And we have to press upon the government to make this very significant. We have to continually campaign the government that this thing, if they need to do it so that we can put something in place, so we can put an infrastructure in place that they can definitely benefit from the skill set, the monies, the resources of the diaspora. And because the government has not, even though they claim, like Duke was just telling me, they've been having a diaspora office in the embassy, and it is dormant as far as I'm concerned. We need it to be active. There's no need of doing something and it's not doing the purpose why you put it there for. So we have to continue campaigning and soliciting the government that they must make this bureau, this department, this section more active so that we can do the kind of contribution they will benefit from in the future.
You know that it was because of that office. Actually, the office was the first one to organize that. January, 26 at the embassy. Saturday they have 26. Yeah, the first time it happened was 2003, and that was the diaspora, office. We had a meeting with the community leaders. We invited Yula. We actually had a diaspora conference, mini conference at the embassy, and then a follow up. We had the 26 events, and it's going to be on the 26th, the embassy on Saturday. You get all the potato green and palm wine.
Oh yeah, I will be down there.
Okay, I'll see you there. Okay, I'll see you there.
All right. The program we just announced, Everett Morris says he's going to donate to that program. Thank you so much, Everett. Well, Mr. Salim, before you come in, Dr. Kama Moluba, when he saw the program, he said, here we go again. We had two groups that led to so many problems, causing many to flee. Now we have created a third group called Diaspora Liberia. What is wrong with us is us. I want you to close, but I just want to share that with you.
I agree. What is wrong with us is us, and that's what we're discussing. That's what we're trying to disrupt, so that we can be, one nation, indivisible, under God for all. You see, so we divide ourselves along various groups, but the fact remains, there is a population in the diaspora outside of Liberia that could significantly contribute to the development of the country, culturally, economically, education-wise, politically, religious, and family and otherwise. And it will take both sides of the Atlantic Ocean, as it were, to get this done. It will take us in the diaspora to organize ourselves really in serious manners that we all have been talking about. And they also take political will on the part of the government to recognize this as an asset. The diaspora population as an asset, to try to leverage people's education, resources, investment opportunities, connections, and so forth, to bring the diaspora, Liberians who are outside of the country, closer to home in a more meaningful way. These cosmetic attempts, there's an office at the embassy, in the presidency, not funded, not fully staffed. It will not cut it. It won't cut it. I mean, to create a trust Jimmy was talking about, to debunk some of these myths and really try to change the discriminatory law. I think that was really a manifestation of the fear and the competition for power and resources that Kanye talked about. So it will take. It's not lost on me that the problem is not just with the government or with the people in Liberia, it's also with us in the diaspora. Someone mentioned in the chat that there are qualified, serious Liberians who have resources, who have wherewithal. They stay away from the community, disengage just because of the polarization and other things in the community. And then the person said, I'm using the language, the uninformed or whatever, step up and take on leadership and then make decisions for everybody. So that hasn't helped. So even in your community, in your diaspora community, wherever you are, you have to engage. We all have to engage with our local communities and contribute, build structures that will then attract the attention of the government. And then the government has to also be strategic, make us part of the development agenda of the country so that we can fully participate and not be strangers in our own country.
Thank you. On that note, when the governor's advisor speak, it's final. I hope I'm not getting you in trouble.
Thank you. You're not getting
Can you put that last comment up?
All right. Sam Wallace say when Dr. Douglas talk about the party at the embassy, this is part of the problem. We party and celebrate too much. Why use government money to celebrate independence at the embassy? Let the community raise those funds. Focus government resources on results-oriented activities.
No, actually, government doesn't spend money. The embassy yard is open. People take table. You pay for your table. If you want to sell food.
And I think you got to pay money to get a table.
You got every table. I remember it was $50 at one point, and then it went to $100. And even then, there were not enough table. So people pay. So
it's to bring people together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who does pay the money to the embassy?
Well, the money goes to the embassy.
Okay, that's what it means. Emmanuel Jackson said, "Oh my God, those countries, when Thomas was naming those countries, he said will achieve macroeconomic development fast. This is huge foreign exchange reserve from the diaspora in those countries attached to a political connection. Let's try it in Mama Liberia, and I don't know why we're not doing it. But again, gentlemen, thank you so much for tonight. I want to thank our viewers. Always watch Focus on Liberia, Monday to Sunday. As your song can say, from Cape Palmas to Cape Mount, from Mount Nimba to the Atlantic Ocean, is Focus on Liberia, baby. Have a good night. Let's close with the song that says, we are all Liberians.
Happy 26.
Happy 26 to everybody.
Happy
And
26.
don't be shy to send your 26 to FOL.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, definitely.
One-
We are